Hey, Mia. Oh, you're on mute.
I just said hi.
Okay, no.
Yeah, no worries. Looks like we're gonna be a little short on members again, but I think we should have enough of a quorum unless we have unexpected non-attendance. So we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, hopefully, we have two weighty things that we can get into deep discussion on, and I think the right people are there to be able to discuss it for like the manufactured homes. Chris never got back to me about if he was able to get a guest speaker or who that might be.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I think we can at least have a discussion and then we'll see. Obviously, pushing everything to next meeting creates other challenges, but you and I can take a look at the schedule in the next couple weeks and figure out like what we realistically have time for guest speakers. I know we want to get Virginie to attend as well, so we'll have to look at our next couple weeks and see what we can do and just sprinkle it in. So we'll see.
sounds good. And just a heads up, I just moved houses and my internet's a little unstable because we haven't gotten the new Wi-Fi in yet. So I think everything should be good, but just in case.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All good. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, moving's very stressful.
It is.
I know last time we moved, my husband was like, I do not care how much it costs. Like, we are hiring professional movers. Like, I will pay any price to never have to do this again. And I'm like, okay, well, still be some effort packing everything up, but I hear you, you know.
This is also our first house that we're like owning ourselves. So it's just like,
Yes.
thank you. But now we're like, okay, all of the things that need to be done.
Yeah, it is kind of terrifying because if something's you're like, oh, I hope that's not a serious thing that's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because we moved in a couple of years ago when we bought our house, and there's stuff that I think I was like, oh, we need to change this right away. And after a while, just stopped bothering me. So I don't know. It is funny what like, but then other things I fixated on. So what you learn to live with is kind of interesting. I found.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of right now I'm of the mind of I know that I will get used to it. So I want to try to get it done now so that it's not later on and I'm like, okay, well, but it's probably healthier just to say there's some things that don't actually need to be done.
Yeah, I mean, you do have more energy when you first move in, and it's good to do stuff that makes you feel at home for sure. I just like I have a weird texture on my ceilings, and I thought this would bother me, and this is kind of invisible now. So yeah. Hi, Ben.
Hello. The joys of home ownership, I think is what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, Ashira just bought
Yeah.
a house, so
Oh, right on.
yeah,
Congrats.
very exciting. But I was saying it's like
you.
very stressful. So settling in. Yeah.
Cool.
And Deirdre, thanks for joining us to cover updates while Dominic is out.
Yeah, absolutely. I unfortunately don't think I'll be able to stay the entire time. So sorry about that, but I'll definitely be around, obviously, for the update section.
Yep, no worries. Yeah, I covered, I think, all the stuff that I thought Dominic should be aware of, and I think he usually tries to catch up after the fact. So I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay, excellent.
Great. And as I mentioned, go on.
No, I was just going to say, it looks like we have a few guests and members of the public, so that's great. We normally have a public comment period, so we're looking forward, a few different public comment periods throughout the meeting, so we're looking forward to hearing from you all then.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, on that note, Ben, I think we heard from a few people who are going to be absent, so I'm hoping we get the quorum we need, but a few last minute illnesses and various other things, so we'll see.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
The summer is so tough. This is definitely not the time for us to stop meeting, but it is really hard to get. Everyone wants to take time off right before school, and it sounds like some bugs are going around or something. So that's how it goes.
True.
Okay, well, I guess we'll just sit tight until we have our quorum. Ashira, do you remember what that number is?
I think it's 6.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now we're at
2.
2.
Okay. That's ominous, but we're gonna fingers crossed on that. So I'm going to, I'll email Chris and make sure he's coming at least because I did not hear from him. And hopefully we get who we need. That's going to be interesting. I'm a little worried because you didn't hear from Chris this year.
Yeah. I'll look to see if I've heard from anyone else. Yeah, Jen won't be joining. I haven't heard from Matt.
I don't think I've heard from Pike. I didn't hear from Chris either way. Does that still only put us at 5 though?
Pike. Let's see. That looks Pike won't be here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think if Pike's definitely not here and Chris isn't here. Wait, so if Chris and Matt are here, that still only puts us at 4. So I'm not seeing a version of us that gets us quorum, I don't think, which is super unfortunate. Okay. Yeah, so I don't think we're gonna make quorum, which is a real bummer. Deirdre, I'll lean to you. I know we can't transact any business. Is there a version of like discussions with no actions and hearing public comment, or is that put us in public meeting territory? I just want to see what we could do.
Yeah, I recently asked our general counsel this because we also were worried about quorum, a recent tag meeting, and she advised you can meet and not discuss the business of the group, but there's not really much there. So unless others have a different interpretation, I think it's probably safest not to hold a meeting if you don't have quorum.
Okay.
Would it make
We do have a lot.
sense sorry, would it make sense to take public comment still?
I guess they're not members of the group, so I don't see why not.
Yeah, I'd like to, just in the interest of, I know people took out time to be here and
Yeah.
certainly don't want to waste anyone's time. So I think we should do public comment. We can note that down for the group, and if there's any action items, bring it forward. And then I think Ashira and I will just have a conversation with the group about attendance. I know some people did contact us, but some of it was like earlier today, and I think it would have been hard for us to pivot at the last minute. So we'll have to find a way for this not to happen again, especially when we have guest speakers. So that's going to put us into challenging territory to stay on schedule. So okay, I will follow up on that issue and seeing what we can do to avoid this in the future. We'll just take public comment without calling this to a start, and I think it's fine for us to hear that. So yeah, I guess if anyone has come to provide public comment, do you think you could raise your digital hand or wave to us on camera, and then we can figure out how much time? Should have plenty. Okay, why don't we start with Debbie, and we'll see if anyone else is interested. Hi, Debbie. Sorry about the canceled meeting today. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I said that's okay. Were you saying this will be rescheduled to conduct business? Should we look for a rescheduled meeting?
It's pretty difficult for us to conduct off-cycle stuff, so I'm anticipating that September 3rd, which is our next scheduled meeting, will be the next one, but I will confirm that, and that would be up on the PUC website if we did change it, but September
Okay.
3rd is most likely. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. Well, I wanted to just mention a couple of things. I have not been involved in this process yet.
Mhm.
So I'm not aware of the discussion that's happened so far. But in terms of clean heat credits and equity, one thing is that I represent Vermont Community Thermal Networks, and I am working with others in Vermont to put thermal energy networks much more on the table as a solution, and also working with a lot of communities on developing projects where heat that is locally sourced from the ground, as in geothermal, or from waste heat that's being vented from buildings, or heat recovery from wastewater. Those are the three sources. Mainly, there's solar thermal and other things that can be incorporated, but those are the main sources we're talking about when we say thermal energy networks. And I had a brief conversation about where this process was headed in terms of clean heat credits for thermal energy networks. And my understanding, what I've heard, is that credits will be awarded after the completion of one of these systems because they are so specific to the buildings and the thermal loads. So there will be guidelines issued for how to do that assessment afterwards. But I see that as an equity issue because this is a neighborhood scale way to decarbonize buildings. And it is very effective. It is one of the most efficient ways to decarbonize buildings, if not the most efficient way, with ground source heat pumps is a key part of the system, and using heat that we already have, in many cases have already paid for. I don't think that awarding credits afterwards is going to incentivize the development of thermal energy networks in the way that clean heat credits could if people knew in advance about how many clean heat credits they were likely to get from developing one of these systems. They're big investments with upfront costs, and we're working on how to develop them in Vermont using utility models so that it is no upfront cost to the customers, but then paid for in rates over time. That is an equitable process and makes it much more accessible to other people. But not having the clean heat credit amount clear from the get-go is going to mean that developers and municipalities and others will be much less likely to pursue this really important solution. So that's my first comment. And my other has to do with RNG and hydrogen, or what are often called decarbonized gases. So I have experience working with people in Massachusetts on gas leaks and methane emissions, and studying RNG and hydrogen quite closely as part of a coalition in Massachusetts over the past 8 years. And part of that is done with organizations in Massachusetts like CLF and others that might be familiar to people here. And from the studying that we've done and the advocacy work, I'm really feeling like there are serious equity issues to allowing RNG and hydrogen to qualify for clean heat credits, because people are going to be leaving the gas system in favor of more efficient, healthier, cleaner, safer ways to heat and cool their homes. And the people left on the system are going to be the people least able to afford transitioning. So the people who are going to be experiencing RNG and hydrogen blending into the gas and pipes are probably some of the people who can already have health impacts from environmental injustices and energy burdens and that kind of thing. And I'm really concerned that if RNG and hydrogen are allowed, it's going to impact the people who are already dealing with health impacts and other social injustices and other issues. So I really feel like it's an equity issue as people leave the gas system, to have those people experiencing the health impacts, the safety impacts, and others of these so-called decarbonized fuels, which actually don't lower emissions if you look at the life cycle costs. So those are the two comments that I wanted to make, and also interested in hearing what this committee has been discussing around those two issues, if anything at all. So thank you very much. I appreciate you listening, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Matt, just to bring you up to speed, we realized at the start of this meeting that we do not have a quorum, so we can't conduct business as the EAG. We have a lot of public comments, so we're taking that and having an informal discussion that doesn't conflict with open meeting law. So happy to answer any questions about that.
That makes sense. Thanks. I apologize. I'm on the road, but listening in.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think since we're doing a free-flowing discussion, we can respond to Debbie's comments. Ben, I didn't know if you wanted to start, had any thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, so to answer your question directly, we have not talked about either of those issues directly in this group. I think certainly your second question about the RNG and hydrogen it might be, I know the TAG, the Technical Advisory Group for the Clean Heat Standard, has talked about that extensively in their bioenergy groups. But with regard to the first question regarding networked geothermal and crediting, I think, it's a good point, because it's difficult to understand, what kind of credits you'd be receiving from building a network geothermal system, before, you actually are, constructing it. So I guess basically the way I envision that working is, because it'd be largely, most of those projects you're discussing would be custom projects, basically for the specific neighborhood or area that it's being put in. The Public Service Department, under the Clean Heat Standard, is going to be charged with basically verifying the credits. And so I know the way that those type of projects currently work with the Tier 3 renewable energy Tier 3 system here in Vermont is that they're basically taken up on a per case basis and verified after they're constructed. I can see a future where after we do understand more thoroughly the value of a clean heat credit and how much carbon each clean heat credit or carbon reduction each credit is worth, that there would be a pretty good, you'd be able to fairly ballpark figure out what kind of credit size or kind of pot of credits you'd be looking at for each network geothermal system. But the department's thermal sector potential study, we do take into account and have some analysis on network geothermal potential in the state of Vermont. So we've definitely considered that as part of the potential study in terms of what is technically achievable and maximum achievability in the state. So that report's going to be the potential study is going to be wrapping up fairly soon here, so there'll be more information on kind of what we projected for the market there. But yeah, in terms of verification, it is going to have to be a custom measure. I think in the measure list in the statute, that's the last point. I believe it's number 12 on the list, if I remember correct. But yeah, I think it is well taken though with the equity point there to try to incentivize that. But just know that we have thought about it and everything. But in the technical realm, at least, with regarding equity, we have not specifically discussed it.
Well, and I think it adds I think the problem that you're getting at is not really specific to custom measures. I mean, the credits are going to have no value until you find someone who wants to pay for them, either an obligated party or someone acting on behalf of an obligated party to get those credits. So that doesn't offer a straightforward financing system up front unless sort of someone steps in to fill that role. So in that respect, if you're doing an ambitious project like a neighborhood one that's going to generate lots of credits, I think you'd be in the same position before as finding someone who's able to finance something on that scale and is interested in taking the credits as sort of part of that deal. I think it gets harder, you're right, if there's not a clear value, but there's a lot of, that sounds like custom financing for a custom project. And I think a lot of different systems are going to struggle to work themselves out without sort of understanding the financing structure that's going to glom onto this regulatory structure that's been created. And I think certainly we've talked about that part from an EAG perspective and are kind of eager to see how that works in practice, since I don't think it's set up by default based on the Clean Heat Standard framework. Okay.
Is it possible? Is it possible for me to do a direct response to what I've heard, or not?
We have enough time to do that. Yeah, sure. Mhm.
Okay, just really quickly. I am working with people who are developing thermal energy networks and working on these projects outside of Vermont. We're working on developing them here too, but projects that are farther along, such as the Framingham project in Massachusetts, if you've heard about that one that Eversource is working on. And there are ways to make it possible to evaluate a project up front. And I'm just hoping that there will be a way in this process for that expertise to be consulted and to include that in the thinking both for this committee and the technical committee. So I would just say that I'm working on putting something together with those people and will be submitting that. So I just wanted to flag that for your consideration, that people doing these projects actually have ideas about how to make it less custom and be able to evaluate projects much more upfront to make it a little bit more equitable in terms of incentivizing them.
Yeah,
So,
I think
thank you.
definitely getting that on the PUC docket is helpful. And then Matt, I don't know, just in your tag discussions, noting that down if there is a question about how to think about custom projects. I don't think there's a specific ask. It's just helpful to consider that.
I think that's a great recommendation. Yeah, absolutely. The issue with credits, to get back to, in custom cases, I think it will just like you described, whether it's financing and that's built into that. I think much more common will be the ones that we assume a credit based on an agreement with the resource manual that tells us what it's going to be, but we still haven't quite figured out how those credits change hands and how the consumer gets it to the contractor if the entity that incentivizes the lower cost for that product or service is the ultimate owner through default mechanism. Like, that's still very much at play, and I think EHA should absolutely weigh in on that. Thanks.
Thanks for
have
raising
more-
the issue, Debbie. I will say that we have not yet taken up as kind of in the rulemaking process the issue of verification. So there still is time to comment on, credit verification, et cetera. And yeah, your comments are well heard, and we at the department would welcome any comments on verification or newfound ways of doing that. We'll definitely take those into consideration. So
Okay, thank you all very much.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to make a comment? Digital hands are coming off camera is helpful. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, thank you for coming. Again, really sorry that this did not happen. We'll discuss ways to avoid that happening, but just a confluence of absences that we didn't expect. So we will probably plan on meeting September 3rd at our regularly scheduled time, but if something changes, we'll make sure that's on the PUC site in a timely manner. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll end the recording and we can all go. Thanks.
have a great afternoon.
Thank you.